Namaskar and welcome to Midday Prime. Well, the unfolding situation in Afghanistan continues to dominate headlines. Currently, it's a country without a legitimate government. Hence, it lacks the basic ingredients of sovereignty. And that fluid situation will continue to occupy our mental stage as we try and comprehend the next steps of the powers that be in Afghanistan. Well, my name is Mark Lynn. Let's begin with the big news at this hour. Prime Minister urges Olympians to spread awareness on importance of sports, health and fitness. From Churma discussion with Neeraj Chopra to ice cream promise to PV Sindhu, the Prime Minister also boosts those who missed the medals. In Afghanistan, Taliban's top leaders reach Kabul for talks, even as the Afghan serving first Vice President Amrullah Saleh stakes claim to being the caretaker president. As per the country's constitution, the US-UK agreed to hold a G7 meeting on the situation, and EU says that no work with Taliban unless human rights are respected. The Supreme Court issues notice on a PIL to quash commission set up by the West Bengal government to investigate Pegasus case. The Solicitor General Tushar Mehta, on behalf of the centre, calls the state government's decision to set up the commission unconstitutional. The Supreme Court allows women to appear in the NDA entrance examination. The result of the examination will depend on the Supreme Court's order, and also the examination will be held on the 5th of September. Foreign Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is in New York for the UN Security Council meetings, discusses the evolving Afghan situation with the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and is scheduled to chair the open debate on protecting the protectors, technology and peacekeeping. India's COVID fight gets stronger. The percentage of active cases to total cases falls to its lowest since March of 2020. The cumulative vaccination coverage also crosses the landmark of 56 crore doses. And the first batch of Indian Paralympic contingent leaves for Tokyo to take part in the Paralympics 2020. The gold medalist in the 2016 Rio Paralympics, Mariyappan Thangavelu, is among the first batch of para-athletes. So let's begin with the big story. And that continues to be the Afghanistan situation. Well, in just a week, we know that the Taliban captured city after city and finally claimed to have taken Kabul under their control, thereby completing a self-proclaimed victory yet to be recognized by most of the world. Now, this takeover, in fact, it comes just weeks before the complete withdrawal of US and NATO soldiers. The Taliban, meanwhile, have said that they wanted peaceful relations with other countries and would respect the rights of women within the framework of Islamic law, as they held their first official news briefing since their lightning seizure of Kabul. A statement from the Taliban said, "A general amnesty has been declared for all, so you should start your routine life with full confidence." The Taliban said that one of its leaders and co-founders, Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, had returned to Afghanistan for the first time in more than 10 years. Meanwhile, the former Afghan President Hamid Karzai will attend talks with Taliban leaders in Doha, the capital of Qatar. And this is according to Afghan media reports. But according to those reports, Karzai will be accompanied by a delegation including Abdullah Abdullah, the head of the Afghan National Reconciliation Council, and Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, the leader of the Hizb Islami Party of Afghanistan. A senior Taliban official in Doha said that earlier The group was discussing Afghanistan's future government framework with the country's key political figures. So he stressed that the Taliban has no intention of power monopoly, but hopes to negotiate with all parties to form an inclusive Islamic government. Meanwhile, armed Taliban soldiers stationed themselves at checkpoints in Kabul ready to question residents in the Afghan capital as they returned to work. Some residents are happy that the Taliban seems to have changed, unlike the older one that had stopped women from working and had also administered punishments. However, many Afghans are skeptical despite the Taliban pledging that there will be no retribution against opponents and also promising to respect the rights of women, minorities and foreigners. That's what the Taliban says they are going to do. Meanwhile, some reports suggest that people are getting their lives back on track in Kabul as small businesses started to resume operations on Tuesday, 2 days after the Taliban took control of the capital. At one of the markets in Kabul, most of the shops were open. Vendors, however, said that they are concerned about the high prices of goods. Prices in Kabul have been rising, making the lives of locals even worse after prolonged war and turmoil. Well, the scenes of chaos, they prevail at the Kabul airport, where large crowds of people are desperate to flee Afghanistan, and they continue to wait for military flights that are evacuating diplomats and civilians, and that resumed early on Tuesday, days after the Taliban had seized the capital. Civilians, some with young children, are continuously waiting within the airport premises for their turn to get out of the country. Well, the video shows a group of Afghan women protesting for their rights in the streets of Kabul as armed men stand nearby, reportedly the first women's protest since the Taliban took over. Now, the video shows 4 women. They're holding up signs and shouting slogans in the streets of Kabul. The camera pans and then shows a man with a rifle walking near these women, as well as other armed men standing in the back of a pickup truck which was parked nearby. Though the Taliban has reportedly changed, they want women to join their new government, and also they have promised that women would be given some rights. Many are skeptical, of course, that this is a militant group given its history of brutal oppression. Now, earlier on Tuesday, the country's first serving Vice President, Amrullah Saleh, staked his claim to being the caretaker president as per the country's constitution. Now, citing the provisions of the Constitution of Afghanistan, Saleh said that the first vice president automatically becomes the caretaker president in the event of the president's absence, escape or resignation. Saleh has not accepted the takeover by the Taliban, saying that he will never be under one ceiling with the Islamist fundamentalists. Earlier, Saleh also called on anti-Taliban groups to join the resistances, and he said that they have not lost the spirit, unlike the United States and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So there's a resistance that is developing. Responding to Vice President Amrullah Saleh's appeal for support, a commando of the Homeland Security under the Ministry of Defense, Sarfaraz, said that he and his team will do whatever is needed. Taking to his official Twitter handle, he pointed out that he had a detailed discussion with his teammates, after which they concluded that they would be joining Amrullah Saleh, who he referred to as the former Vice President and present President of Afghanistan, in the country's Panjshir district. The US President Joe Biden and the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson have agreed to hold a virtual meeting of the G7 countries next week on the fast unfolding developments in Afghanistan. Biden and Johnson spoke over the phone regarding the developments in Afghanistan, and the White House said that the leaders commended the bravery and professionalism of their military and civilian personnel who are working together in Kabul on the evacuation of their citizens and Afghan nationals who assisted in the war effort. According to the White House, both the leaders discussed the need for continued close coordination among allies and democratic partners on Afghanistan's policy going forward, including ways the global community can provide further humanitarian assistance and support for refugees and other vulnerable Afghans. As Afghanistan remains in a state of flux, the United Nations Human Rights Council will be holding a special session next week on the situation there, and they'll be addressing serious human rights concerns after the Taliban's takeover. A United Nations statement said that the Geneva Forum is set to convene on the 24th of this month at the request of nearly 90 other countries supporting the move. Convening a special session requires support from 1/3 of the Council's 47 member states. A provisional UN list showed backers so far include members Britain and France, but not China and Russia, while the United States was not among supporting countries with observer status. The UN human rights spokesperson Rupert Colville has said that the desperate scenes at the Kabul airport earlier this week underlined the gravity of the situation after the Taliban had seized power. All the major population centers in Afghanistan are now under their control. And he said that the fear instilled in a significant proportion of the population is profound. The Taliban spokesperson, they have in recent days issued a number of statements. And what have they been saying? They've pledged an amnesty for those who worked for the previous government as well.
They've said women can work and girls can go to school. Such promises will need to be honoured, and for the time being, again, understandably given the past history, these declarations have been greeted with some scepticism.
Well, the European Union will have to engage with the Taliban to provide support to the Afghan people, even if it does not recognize them as legitimate rulers of that country. Now, speaking after an emergency meeting of the European Union foreign ministers, the EU foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, said that starting a dialogue soon was necessary to prevent a potential migratory disaster and a humanitarian crisis.
We'll have to get in touch with the authorities in Kabul. The authorities in Kabul, wherever they are. The Taliban have won the war. So we will have to talk with them in order to engage in a dialogue as soon as necessary to prevent a humanitarian and a potential migratory disaster, but also a humanitarian crisis. I haven't said that we're going to accept the Taliban whatever they do. They said that we will put conditions for continuing our support, and we are going to use our leverage, all our leverage, in order to make the human rights to be respected.
Australia has evacuated 26 people, including its citizens and those who worked with its military from Afghanistan in its first rescue flight. The Prime Minister of Australia, Scott Morrison, said the flight was able to depart after security around the airport in Kabul improved with the presence of British and US troops. Australia on Monday said that it would send 250 military personnel to Kabul to evacuate its citizens and an unspecified number of Afghans who had been given visas after working there with the Australians.
We were able to get our first flight in last night and enabling us to transfer also in key personnel from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Home Affairs and Defence to facilitate the evacuation of citizens, residents and visa holders, Afghan nationals from Kabul. This was the first of what will be many flights, subject to clearance and weather, and we do note that over the back end of this week there is some not too favourable weather forecasts. There were 26 people who were on board that flight. That included Australian citizens, Afghan nationals with visas, and one foreign official who was working with an international agency. I remind people that we are working with other agencies, working with other governments, like-minded and others, to address their needs as well as our own, and we're seeking to maximise the use of all the flights from all the countries that are going in and out of Kabul.
France on Tuesday evacuated 21 Indian nationals from Kabul. The French ambassador to India, Emmanuel Lenain, in a tweet said that the first French evacuation flight from Kabul yesterday included 21 Indian nationals, the elite Gurkhas, who were ensuring security of the French embassy. The Taliban has meanwhile told the United States that it will provide safe passage for civilians to reach the airport in Afghanistan's capital, Kabul. The U.S. National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, said that the United States believes the Kabul evacuation can go until August 31, and it is talking to the Taliban about the exact timetable. Thousands of U.S. troops have been flown into Kabul to assist in the evacuation efforts after the collapse of Afghanistan's military and government after swift advances by Taliban forces.
We gave 20 years of American blood, treasure, sweat, and tears in Afghanistan. We gave them every capacity in terms of training and equipment to stand up and fight for themselves. And at some point, it was the time for the United States to say that the Afghan people had to stand up for themselves. I want to be very clear about what our position is. Our position is that we are going to have to deal with the potential threat of terrorism from Afghanistan going forward, just as we have to deal with the potential threat of terrorism in dozens of countries in multiple continents around the world.
Meanwhile, the United States has completed a drawdown of embassy personnel from Kabul, and the diplomatic staff there remaining are assisting in the evacuation of American citizens and Afghan allies. The State Department spokesperson Ned Price said that the U.S. forces took charge of the airport on Sunday as the Taliban militants wound up a week of rapid advances by taking over Kabul without a fight. Now, he added that the United States would also evacuate as many Afghans as possible who had helped during its 20-year war in the country, he said.
Our team is working hand in glove with military colleagues to help load planes safely and securely and as fast as possible. We've now completed our drawdown to the core diplomatic presence we need, and at this time, we will no longer need to facilitate departures for our embassy personnel. All remaining embassy staff will be assisting departures from Afghanistan, and the department is surging resources and consular affairs personnel to augment the relocation of American citizens and Afghan special immigrants, and elsewhere, adding personnel to assist with P1, P2 adjudication processing. Right now, we are thinking about this in terms of August 31st. If it is safe and responsible for us to potentially stay longer, that is something that we may be able to look at.
Well, the people fleeing the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan arrived in the UK as well on Tuesday evening, following Britain's announcement that it plans to welcome thousands of Afghans. And as per the UK government's promise to resettle thousands of Afghan refugees, over 20,000 Afghans have been offered a route to set up home in the UK in the coming years. In the first year, 5,000 refugees will be eligible, with women, girls and others in need having a priority. The new plan is on top of the existing scheme for interpreters and other staff who worked for the UK. Germany also is working to get as many people as possible out of Afghanistan as quickly as possible as well. In a series, a Bundeswehr plane carrying about 100 evacuees. They included women and children as well. It landed in Tashkent on Tuesday, and many more people are being and also will be evacuated in the future. So Germany has deployed 600 soldiers for the purpose of this evacuation. And coming to India now, the External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is on a visit to the United States and will today chair the open debate on protecting the protectors, technology and peacekeeping. The open debate on peacekeeping will focus on the theme of protecting the protectors, including through the use of modern technological tools to enhance safety and security of peacekeepers and to aid peacekeeping missions. India, in collaboration with the UN, would be rolling out the Unite Aware platform, and this is a situational awareness software program that allows peacekeeping operations, the Center of Peacekeeping Operations, to visualize and analyze the ground situation in a conflict zone, and that will happen on a real-time basis. So an MOU between India and the UN in the support of the Partnership for Technology and Peacekeeping initiative is expected also to be signed during this visit. So the External Affairs Minister will also preside over a briefing session on Thursday on the threats to international peace and security caused by terrorist acts. Dr. Jaishankar's visit to the United States, to New York especially, in fact, comes during India's presidency of the United Nations Security Council. And during this visit, Dr. Jaishankar will also have bilateral meetings with the foreign ministers of several other member states on the sidelines of the UNSC high-level events. So let's go across to our correspondent Meghna, who is following all these events. Now, Meghna, let's first understand about the status of Indians in Afghanistan and others seeking visas to come to India. What's the current position on that?
Yes, Mark, India has clearly stated its priorities. The Ministry of External Affairs had set up a special Afghanistan cell which is working round the clock to actually, collect all the details of the national standard there. And that actually, that the Ministry of External Affairs has said that there are still a number of people stranded in Afghanistan, and the details are being collected. There are a number of people who have been employed by third-party organizations. So either their employers fill in the details, or the person who wants to come back must fill the details. So there has been 3 landline numbers given, 1 WhatsApp number given, and besides that, very important, 1 mail ID has also been given, which is situationroom@mea.gov.in. so a mail ID has also been given by the Ministry of External Affairs, wherein all the details can be sent. The MEA has said that it is a continuously evolving situation, and it is in touch with the Hindus, the Sikhs that are there, the Indian nationals that are there, and obviously emergency visa application, that portal is also open. People, Afghan nationals can apply for emergency visa in that category as well.
So the EM is also going to open the debate in the UNSC on peacekeeping. And what about the chances of anti-Taliban forces getting some support as a result of that conversation?
Very importantly, this was on India's agenda for the UNSC. 3 signature events were there, which is for maritime cooperation. Then there is counter-terrorism and peacekeeping. Out of this, the peacekeeping on the theme of protecting the protectors. So this is going to be, today Indian Standard Time around 7:30 p.m. This open debate will be there, and the External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar will be chairing it, presiding over it in that sense. And this becomes very important in that context, that the situation, the continuously evolving situation in Afghanistan has also raised a huge humanitarian crisis. So what kind of, it might just happen that what kind of peacekeeping efforts are required in there, because when we are talking about peacekeeping, the theme is not only about protecting the protectors, but besides that, the entire subject also has technology in there. So what kind of technology can be deployed, or what kind of technology can be used to actually assess, actually help the peacekeepers at that point of time to understand the real-time situation of the conflict zone. So all of that can definitely be discussed in there, and I believe that Afghanistan situation will definitely be discussed at that open debate as well, and what kind of peacekeeping efforts can be made in that sense. This will also be very important to see what happens today, 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time.
Thanks very much, Meghna, and Meghna will be watching out on that for us. We are joined by a guest we're privileged to have with us, Ashok Sajanhar, former senior diplomat, for his perspective. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sajanhar. So the situation in Afghanistan, of course, is, there's so much to talk about, but the question is of legitimacy for the Taliban. They bring in a medieval kind of mindset, and in those days, in the medieval days, there was not much room for diplomacy, was there? So, can anyone talk to them?
You are very right, Mark, that yes, definitely, not only that they are taking back the country 20 years, but in terms of the laws and the rules and regulations that they are trying to implement on the ground, they are very medieval, whether it is as far as women are concerned, as far as girls are concerned, their education, their work conditions, they will not be allowed to go out of homes without being chaperoned by a male member. Girls will not be allowed to go for education. They will not be allowed to work in offices, and also, the sort of treatment that was meted out to the minorities, that really comes out of ages. But we've seen over the last few years that many countries have started negotiating with them, have started talking with them, have started conversing with them. So, even the debate that was held at the UN Security Council on Monday, there were some countries which said that, we can look at working positively with the Taliban. You would recall that a big Taliban delegation led by Mullah Ghani Baradar had gone to Beijing, and they had met Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, and they had said that, we look forward, Taliban is an important stakeholder and an important political and military force in Afghanistan.
Yes.
And similarly, we have seen Russia also making similar statement at the UN Security Council that they have been able to restore peace and normalcy, which we had not seen for a long time when Ashraf Ghani government was there. So I think there are some countries which have been talking to the Taliban for quite some time, and they have, in a manner of speaking, been given some sort of legitimacy, although the point of view of India and a number of other countries, which met in Qatar and issued a statement on the 12th of August, saying that any government or any takeover by force in Kabul will not get global legitimacy, international legitimacy, and recognition by the international community.
So, in principle, there is, in the concept of peace, there has to be a balance of power. Well, the Taliban seems to be, very powerful at the point of time, but there is a resistance. There are voices against the Taliban from within Afghanistan. Could, countries around the world sort of rally behind that voice, that resistance, and find some way of peace which is can become peace by balance of power? Or do you think that the Taliban will just exercise force and and then it will go back to its medieval mindset?
You made a very important point. You are very right when you say, and in your report you did mention about Amrullah Saleh as the first vice president, who has said that in the absence of Ashraf Ghani, who has resigned, he becomes the caretaker president, and he is reaching out to others in Afghanistan and outside to muster support from them. And some of the forces, some of the groups and the militias in Afghanistan, I think, are veering towards that. But many of what the opposition to the Taliban was in the early 2000s, or even in the 1990s, whether it is Rashid Dostum or it is Ismail Khan or some of the others, they seem to have either been defeated or they seem to have been co-opted by the Taliban. The other is, as far as the international forces are concerned. Now, we have seen that the Americans were there and NATO was there. They've been there for 20 years. And they have really not been able to do anything about peace and security in Afghanistan. So I don't think that they will be willing or ready to come into Afghanistan once again to sort of, establish some modicum of democracy, independence, sovereignty and modernity there. What I think the Taliban could possibly do is that, to give a semblance of inclusiveness to the global community, they might add certain elements from the minority communities. For instance, the government that they are drawing up, that they are getting together. We have that Mullah Ghani Baradar becomes the president. We have Akhundzadeh becomes the prime minister. We have some of the others, Haqqani, Saifuddin Haqqani becomes whatever the foreign minister, whatever it is. But they might include some members, some elements of the Tajik community, some elements of the Uzbek community, maybe Rashid Dostum, some elements of the minority Shia Hazara, basically to pacify the the Iranians and so on and so forth, and maybe have one or two women also, basically to tell the world, this is the psychological and information. I will not say warfare, but the manner in which they are trying to reach out to the world that we are not what we were in the 1990s. We are very different, and we will respect human rights and women's rights and all the other things.
So they are claiming to be a good Taliban and not a bad Taliban, but the question is that there is no good or bad Taliban, right? That's the question that most people have in their minds, and the clarity with which they seem to be clearly the way they took power for one, the way they are going to not really promote women's rights. They're taking the country backwards in time, and the world community can't really stand by and say that we can accept something like this in the modern age. And we are also afraid, as the United States said, that terrorism will restart from there. Even perhaps if the world, around the world, anti-terrorist forces have developed or skill sets that have developed, technology is being used, which is going to be discussed in the UN Security Council. So all this it's a much bigger debate. I mean, is that going to become the center once again, the microcosm for terrorism?
Okay, let me put it this way. You are very right that you cannot take them on the face value, whatever they are seeing. After all, whatever action they are taking on the ground, that will validate or otherwise, whatever their statements are. And I think these statements they might be making in Kabul, but in many of the provinces, the treatment that is being meted out to the women, the treatment that is being meted out to the minorities is very, very different from what they have been claiming. The other thing is what India has mentioned, and it's, that's the immediate challenge, that this should not become a staging ground for terrorism worldwide. That I think is the worry, not only of India, but of a large number of other countries. Even, for instance, countries like China and Russia, which have said that they are willing to work.
They've already recognized the Taliban to some extent, yes.
They have said that, we have problems as far as ISIS and Al-Qaeda is concerned. They have said we have problems. China has said problems with East Turkestan Islamic movement. So I think there are definitely, we have to have, in India definitely, we have to have some strategic patience to be able to see what the, how they are going to, work on the ground, in terms of policies that they might announce, but what is the action that they are going to take on the ground? I think that's going to be very important, that the next few weeks and months will bring out. What you mentioned about the UN Security Council discussions, absolutely, I think this is going to be a question that is going to be uppermost in the minds of the countries. We have under India's presidency, we have had 2 meetings on Afghanistan within the first, within 10 days. And now we are going to be having both a meeting on peacekeeping that is happening today and a meeting on counterterrorism that happens tomorrow. So I think Afghanistan is definitely going to be a burning issue that will be discussed by all members of the UN Security Council.
Well, currently the debate on Afghanistan is about legitimacy, about whether the country is sovereign at all. There are too many players who have control, who controls the Taliban, who is behind them. And we see that there is a nexus that we're very quick to sort of recognize the Taliban. The question is now, India has invested such a lot of money and has very good will amongst the people. The people of Afghanistan are very, very, positive in their way of their thinking of Indians. How can India capitalize on this, given the change of circumstances?
2 or 3 things. One is that earlier you would recall that Taliban had said that, as far as Kashmir is concerned, it's an internal issue of India and we have nothing to say. So, if they are not sending from their, the ungoverned spaces in Afghanistan, if that is not used as a launch pad to send out terrorists to India, that will be, some reassurance as far as we are concerned. Secondly, what they have said is that the projects that India has created in Afghanistan, all these, whether it is the Afghanistan-India Friendship Dam or the Pune-Fumri transmission line or the Zaranj-Delaram Road, and the thousands of other projects. We have more than 400 projects running in all the 34 provinces, and they have said that these are very welcome because these are for the benefit of the Afghan people and they would like them to continue. So if they are willing to work with India, willing to ensure the safety and security of India, respect the red lines that we have in terms of not engaging in terrorist actions against India, then we can have we can think of having a working relationship with the Taliban. As your report also said, that even Joseph Borrell, the EU, so to say, the foreign minister, he has said it in so many words that, to ensure that international law is respected, we will have to engage with the Taliban. And here, as far as India is concerned, are very fundamental security and strategic interests are involved. So we'll really have to see, that's what I mean by strategic patience, that we bide our time. Of course, we stay in very active contact with our interlocutors and with the other partners and stakeholders, whether it is Russia, it is Iran, it is the Central Asian countries.
Yes, absolutely.
And then see how the Taliban equips itself on the ground.
Thanks very much for that important perspective, Ambassador Sajanhar, and for helping us understand the situation a lot better. Moving on then to our developing story. Well, Ayushman Bharat, that's the flagship scheme of the Government of India, and it was launched as recommended by the National Health Policy of 2017, and it's achieving the vision of universal health coverage. Now, this initiative has been designed to meet Sustainable Development Goals. Its underlining commitment, which is to leave no stone unturned and leave no one behind. Also, over 2 crore people have availed of treatment under Ayushman Bharat, the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana as it's called. As per the government records, 24,683 crore rupees have been spent under the Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. And according to the National Health Authority, approximately 16.20 crore eligible beneficiaries have been verified under the scheme and provided with Ayushman cards. The NHA, the National Health Authority, said that there are 918 health benefits packages with fixed rates covering 1,669 procedures along with COVID treatment and diagnostic tests. So far, a network of approximately 23,000 public and private hospitals have been empaneled with the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana across the country. Now, moving on to our National Prime segment. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has urged the Tokyo Olympics Indian contingent to visit 75 schools by the 15th of August 2023, and the Prime Minister requested them to spend an hour with students at these schools to create awareness about malnutrition and to inspire them for sports. The Prime Minister has shared a video of his interaction with the Olympic returned Indian athletes. The Prime Minister also fulfilled his promise to have ice cream with two-time Olympic medalist PV Sindhu and churma with India's first ever gold medalist in track and field, Neeraj Chopra. So during his interaction with the Indian contingent of the Tokyo Olympics 2020 on Monday, the Prime Minister urged the athletes to reach out to the school and college students and create awareness about malnutrition and to inspire them for sports. In all, he stressed on ensuring good health and fitness We also discussed their performance in the Olympic 2020, in the Olympics of 2020, and also the amount of effort that they put in for the games. He said that the athletes have not only won hearts, but they have also inspired future generations. India recorded its best ever medal haul at the Tokyo Olympics, bagging a total of 7 medals, 1 gold, 2 silver, 4 bronze medals.
एक लेक्चर पोषण के संबंध में, न्यूट्रिशन वैल्यू के संबंध में, क्योंकि खिलाड़ी के जीवन में वो बहुत बड़ा होता है, विकास के लिए भी जड़ा। तो आप हैरान हो जाएंगे, हमारी जो बच्चियां हैं वो 13, 14, 15 साल में ऐसी एनेमिक कंडीशन में होती है कभी कभी, और 5 साल 10 साल के बाद जब वो मां बनेगी तो बच्चा स्वस्थ पैदा ही नहीं हो सकता। और जिस देश का बचपन स्वस्थ ना हो वो देश भी कभी स्वस्थ नहीं हो सकता। और एक बहुत बड़ा सामाजिक काम मैं आपको इसलिए कह रहा हूं, स्पोर्ट्स पर्सन जब कहता है तो इस विषय में वो विश्वास करता है, हाँ यार देखिए यहां तक पहुंचा तो खाने में उसने नियमों का पालन किया। तो मैं आपसे एक अपेक्षा करता हूं कि आप एक तो खुद कॉलेज के बच्चों से मिले तो क्या बोलना, स्कूल के बच्चों से मिले तो क्या बताना, प्राइमरी बच्चों से मिले, ऐसे 3-4 विषय तैयार करके ऑनलाइन सब अवेलेबल होता है। मैं भी आपको नोट भेज दे, डिपार्टमेंट ऐसी व्यवस्था करूंगा, लेकिन आप एक लेक्चर तैयार कीजिए और उनको समझाइए, और मैं समझता हूं कि एक बहुत बड़ी सेवा होगी।
Prime Minister also appreciated Neeraj Chopra and said that success doesn't get to his head, and loss also doesn't stay in one's mind.
कि विजय तुम्हारे सर पे नहीं चढ़ता है, और दूसरा मैंने देखा है कि पराजय तुम्हारे मन में नहीं बैठता है। ये दोनों चीजें बहुत बड़ी है, और ये मैं तुम्हें जब भी तुमसे बात किया है हर बार बड़ा बैलेंसिंग चीजें देखी है। कुछ तो होगा जी।
सर वो तो हमारा स्पोर्ट्स ऐसा है कि मतलब अपोनेंट पे निर्भर तो करता है, लेकिन हमें अपना बेस्ट देना होता है। मतलब हम फाइनल इकट्ठे खेलते हैं, 12 लोग होते हैं, लेकिन उन एथलीट्स के बीच में हमें अपने आप पे फोकस करना होता है, हमें बस अपना ही बेस्ट करना होता है। तो कोशिश यही करता हूँ कि दूसरे की परफॉर्मेंस की तरफ ध्यान ना देके या उसकी परफॉर्मेंस को देख के नर्वस ना होके अपनी परफॉर्मेंस कैसे बेटर करनी है उस पर फोकस करूँ।
अच्छा, ये चूरमा वूरमा खाया कि नहीं खाया?
खाया था सर, सोफा होटल में बना के
कब खाया अभी?
आते ही वहाँ से
और एक बार खड़ा होगा।
आप भी खाइए सर।
मेरा क्या होता है, मैं इस चातुर्मास सिर्फ एक टाइम खाना खाता हूँ।
थैंक यू सर।
तो मेरे लिए बड़ी नियमों का इतना बड़ा पाबंदी रखता हूँ मैं। भाई सबको खिलाइए। हाँ,
Well, the Prime Minister also said, in fact, he had some lighter moments, some inspiring discussions with PV Sindhu as well.
मैंने एकेडमी और स्पोर्ट्स स्कूल लगाने के लिए सोच रही थी, तो मुझे वाइजैक में लैंड दिया था, बट अभी तो खेल रही हूँ, बट बाद में ऑब्वियसली मेरा पापा सपोर्ट करेंगे, तो ही विल बी डूइंग द एकेडमी साइड। तो आफ्टर प्लेइंग तब
भाई पहले मुझे इसको आइसक्रीम खिलाना है, मैंने प्रॉमिस किया था उसको। सब बंद हो गया ना?
हाँ सर, अभी ओलंपिक्स टाइम पे ऑब्वियसली बंद हो गया, बट अभी थोड़े दिन से
सबको खिलाइए भाई। हाँ। ये भी फिर डबल मेडल लेके आएंगे।
सर वो मेरा कोच है सर, पार्क उनका नाम।
So you are from Korea?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
South Korea, sir. Namaste, sir.
Ever have you visited Ayodhya?
Yeah.
Ayodhya? You know anything about Ayodhya?
Did you visit?
There is a special relation with Korea and Ayodhya. And last time, the first lady, your president's wife, she came here.
Yes, sir.
She came to attend that function in Ayodhya.
Yeah.
She was a special guest. So you must visit Ayodhya and you must know what is the history about Ayodhya, and you will feel proud.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you. It's my honor, sir. Actually, yesterday I told phone call to my wife.
Oh.
So she tell me, I tell her, wife, tomorrow I gonna meet Prime Minister of India, so Narendra Modi Prime Minister. She say me, oh my God, crazy, honey. It's your life succeed. Yes.
Well, with the Olympic medal winner Ravi Dahiya, the Prime Minister talked about his winning bout.
वो आखिरी सेकंड्स कुछ था जितने लोगों को लगता है यार क्या होगा पता नहीं, अचानक से तूने खेल बदल दिया।
यही था कि जेगो जी जो करके दिखाना है।
नहीं, तुम्हारे दिमाग में था कि तुम इसका प्रयोग करोगे या मौका मिल गया वहाँ?
नहीं, देखो पहले ही दिमाग में था कि बस अब एक ही टेक्निक है, अगर इसमें अगर सफल होना है तो बस ये लगानी है, उसके बाद।
लेकिन तुम्हारा हाथ काट लिया, ये क्या काटा है, वो काटा है, ये वाला। उसके बाद भी तुम जकड़ के रहे।
देखो जी वो टाइम ऐसा था, अगर छोड़ देता तो शायद बाउट किधर भी हो सकती थी।
बाद में कोई एक्शन लेते हैं क्या इस प्रकार से, कोई काटता छाटता है तो?
हाँ जी लेते हैं, देखो पर थोड़ा ना उस टाइम पे मतलब इतना ही था क्योंकि सबसे बड़ी बात है ना खून नहीं आए थे उसके अंदर से, लीला तो हो गया था, अगर खून आते तो शायद कुछ एक्शन हो जाता।
अच्छा, लेकिन बहुत अच्छा किया आपने।
When interacting with the Olympic medalist in wrestling, Bajrang Punia, the Prime Minister asked him how he played so well even after a knee injury.
और बजरंगी
आशीर्वाद आप लोगों का।
तुम्हारे ये पैर में इतनी चोट आई और तुम खेलते रहे, बाद में तुम्हारी पट्टी खोलने का निर्णय तुमने कैसे कर दिया आगे कि निकाल दो मुझे, जो होगा सो होगा, ऐसा मन कैसे बन गया?
देखिए पूरी लाइफ एक खिलाड़ी का सपना होता है ओलंपिक में देश के लिए अपने मेडल जीते और गोल्ड जीते, तो यही था लास्ट बाउट थी, तो डॉक्टरों ने बोला कि भाई टेप तो आपको करनी पड़ेगी, तो मैंने यही बोला कि भाई अभी टूट भी जाएगा तो क्या फ़ायदा, पहले मेडल ज़रूरी है, क्योंकि मैं यहाँ मेडल के लिए आया था और देशवासियों ने गोल्ड की उम्मीद की थी, तो वो गोल्ड तो नहीं जीत पाया, उसकी भरपाई मैं 24 में पूरा करने की कोशिश करूँगा और मेहनत करूँगा।
वो तो मुझे पूरा भरोसा है, तुम चुप बैठने वाले नहीं हो।
Inspiring words there from the Prime Minister as well as the Olympic champions. Well, the Prime Minister also talked to the wrestler Vinesh Phogat and told her that she had really played well, and he said that an athlete must always remain upbeat and not get demoralized.
और विनेश, ये तो मेरे ही परिवार की है। क्या बेटा, बहुत तुम गुस्सा आ गया तुम्हें, अपने आप पर गुस्सा क्यों करती हो? हैं? देखिए तुमने बहुत अच्छा खेला है और तुम्हारे परिवार ने, पूरे परिवार ने बहुत कुछ अच्छा दिया है। विनेश निराश नहीं हो सकती जी, ये बात नहीं चलेगी। मैंने सुना तुम आने के बाद भी किसी को मिलती नहीं थी, ये क्या तरीका है?
सर इतनी मेहनत के बाद जब मेडल नहीं आता तो दुख होता है काफी।
नहीं, ऐसा नहीं होता है तो... अरे खिलाड़ी की जिंदगी में हारना है तो बाएं हाथ का खेल होता है। वो हारने से कभी चिंता नहीं करता है।
हार एक्सेप्ट करने में थोड़ा सा टाइम लगता है सर मेरे को।
नहीं, बताए कि मन से निकालना चाहिए। और मैंने जो है अभी मैंने नीरज से एक बात कही, मेरा मत है कि जीत को कभी सर पे चढ़ने मत दो और हार को मन में बसने मत दो। ये मंत्र जीवन में बहुत जरूरी होते हैं। जो जीत में, उसके दिमाग में अगर जीत भर गई तो भी निकम्मा हो जाता है, और हार उसके मन में बस गई तो भी यही हाल हो जाता है। तो विनेश, मैं पूरे परिवार को तुझे जानता हूं, तुम्हें दिन नहीं देख सकता हूं, वरना एकता करो। हफ्ते 10 दिन के बाद मम्मी बहनें सब मेरे यहाँ बैठूंगा, बैठ देगा आधे घंटे कौन लोगों के साथ।
थैंक यू सर।
ये नहीं चलेगा।
आपने जो ये बात बोल दी है सर, मेरे ख्याल से सभी एथलीट उससे मोटिवेट होंगे जिनका मेडल नहीं आया है।
Well, congratulating the Indian hockey team for winning the bronze medal in Tokyo, the Prime Minister asked about their coach Graham Reed's experience, and the hockey goalkeeper PR Srijesh said that the Prime Minister talking to the team after they lost in the semi-finals was a morale booster.
गरम है माहौल, जब से आप हॉकी जीत करके आए हो. So, how do you feel?
Fantastic, sir. Fantastic.
After 41 years.
After 41 years, to bring the medal back to India was wonderful.
But now, how do you feel?
I feel very proud.
Wow.
Very proud, sir. Yes.
देखिए आपकी ये हॉकी की जो विक्ट्री है यार, आपने और बेटियों ने दोनों ने कमाल किया है. और भारत ओलंपिक में कितना ही जीत ले, लेकिन अगर हॉकी नहीं जीतता है तो इस देश को फील ही नहीं होता कि वो जीत हुई है.
थैंक यू सो मच.
श्रीजेश को तो तब पंजाबी सीखना पड़ेगा तुझे.
नहीं सर, मैं लोगों को मलयालम सिखाता हूँ अभी.
क्योंकि गोलकीपर को तो सबको सूचना देता रहता है.
सर, आप जिस टाइम हम लोग जब सेमीफाइनल हारने के बाद बात किया ना सर, थैंक यू वेरी मच. क्योंकि जब जीतने के बाद सब हम लोग को तारीफ करता है, बट जब हारने के बाद जिस टाइम आपका फ़ोन कॉल आ गया सर, वो हमारे लिए बहुत ज़्यादा एक मोटिवेशन था.
लेकिन तुम जीत कर के बाद वहाँ जाके कैसे बैठ गए?
सर, वो मेरा घर है एक्चुअली. मैं 21 साल से उसी के सामने खड़ा था, तब वो एक्साइटमेंट में फूल के ऊपर चढ़ गया सर.
The Prime Minister also interacted with Olympic medalist Mirabai Chanu, during which he said that Mirabai honoring truck drivers as a gesture of gratitude for dropping her off for training daily. It's a very inspiring story.
देखिए, आपने मेडल जीतने से हर किसी को गर्व हुआ, मुझे भी हुआ, लेकिन मुझे एक और बात से संतोष हुआ, और वो जब तुमने अपने ड्राइवरों को बुला करके उनका सम्मान किया. ये मैं सच बताता हूँ, मेडल से गर्व होना और ये नम्रता और उनको याद करना, ये तो कोई बड़े संस्कारों के कारण संभव होता है, और ये तुमने करके दिखाया. मैं समझता हूँ कि देश के सब लोगों को ये प्रेरणा मिलेगी, क्योंकि यही लोग थे जिन्होंने तुम्हारी इतनी मदद की और तुमने मेडल जीतने के बाद सबको याद किया. ये अपने आप में बड़ी बात है.
Moving on to other stories then, the Supreme Court today sought responses from the centre and the West Bengal government on a plea challenging the setting up of a commission of inquiry by the state to probe into the Pegasus snooping allegations. The West Bengal government last month had announced a commission of inquiry comprising a retired Supreme Court judge, Justice Madan B. Lokur, and the former Chief Justice of the Calcutta High Court, Justice Jyotirmay Bhattacharya. And in some good news, the Supreme Court has passed an interim order allowing women to take the National Defence Academy examination, which is scheduled for the 5th of September. And the Apex Court said that admissions would be subject, of course, to its final orders. The interim order, it came in response to a petition seeking the entry of women in the NDA, the National Defence Academy. The Minister of State for Information and Broadcasting, B.L. Murugan, today offered prayers to his family deity at the Perumal temple in K. Pudupalaya. And this is part of the Jan Ashirvad Yatra. Also, Murugan took his parents' blessings after being received in his native village Konnur, which is in Namakkal. Later, the minister also visited his alma mater, the Konnur Government Higher Secondary School, and met his teachers there. And the Congress MP Shashi Tharoor was cleared by a Delhi court today of charges linked to the death of his wife, Sunanda Pushkar, in 2014. Sunanda Pushkar was found dead in a suite of a luxury hotel in Delhi on the 9th of January the 17th in 2014. Shashi Tharoor was charged with abetment to suicide and cruelty by the Delhi police. The court today refused to frame charges against Tharoor and cleared the former union minister of all the charges. Well, business news now. Let's wait for Midday Prime Business. Tanvi is there. Over to you, Tanvi.
Thank you, Mark. In Business Prime, the domestic stock markets have lost ground after both the Sensex and the Nifty hit fresh intraday record highs in early trade on Wednesday. So the Sensex at the BSE had dropped 243 points, 0.4% to 55,549 a short while ago. Earlier in the morning, the Sensex had crossed the 56,000 mark for the first time ever. The market capitalization of the BSE listed companies also hit an all-time high. The Nifty at the National Stock Exchange had declined 65 points or 0.4% to 16,550. In the broader market, the BSE mid-cap index had gained 0.1%, but the small-cap index had declined 0.3%. Other key Asian markets rose on Wednesday despite Wall Street's overnight declines. So MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan rose 0.5%, snapping 5 successive sessions of declines, but still traded close to year-to-date lows touched in July. Japan's Nikkei 225 index rose 0.6%. China's Shanghai Composite Index added 1.1%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index gained 0.3%. And South Korea's Kospi Index rebounded from an 8-day losing streak to rise 0.5%. Back home at the interbank forex market, the rupee had appreciated 6 paise against the dollar in early trade on Wednesday amid strong buying seen in the domestic equity markets. Later, the rupee was up 6 paise at 74 rupees 28 paise against the dollar in afternoon deals. That's it for the moment in Business Prime. Back to you, Mark.
Thanks very much, Tanvi, and that's all the time we have in Midday Prime today. Thanks very much for being with us, but remember, even though the numbers are coming down in COVID, we are still there, not out of the woods, so it's always safe to keep yourself masked up, and if you haven't taken the jab, get the jab done. Thanks for being with us. Namaskar.